Hi again. So this is video 2 of the Reincarnation series, and I'm going to start right back into the story. So my sister actually called me. She watched the last one and she kind of was freaking out because this isn't just my story. This is a couple of people's story, my mom and my sister involved. So she's like, Natalie, you said it was going to be about reincarnation, and that was scary, because remember when he came into my house? Yeah, so that was part of it. While I was having that go on in my life, at the very same time, my mom had been talking to someone online, and that person kept saying weird things to her. And one of those particular things was, I made people bleed back in 1969. And another weird thing he did was he sent her a six-page document about reincarnation and how it's proven in the Bible. Actually, very, very documented paper or thing. What's it called? Like report about how he proved reincarnation was real in the Bible. And another really particular thing he said to my mom during this period of time was, he says, your daughter's beautiful. She's like dancing with roses. And my mom thought that was the weirdest thing. And according to my sister, what had happened was somebody came one night and knocked on her window, and she couldn't see who it was, but she had a bad feeling, so she didn't open the window. But then she heard the door open, in which we have a big polygamous house, which isn't uncommon, but it was like, she said it was really, really, like either late at night or early in the morning. It was just, she could tell it was an intruder and not just someone that was supposed to be there. And she says they came down the stairs, and we had those creaky stairs, you know, the ones that scare kids. Yeah. So he came down to the basement, and he went into one room, and then he went into the other, and she said he came in and looked at her and my other sister, and then he walked back up, and then she heard him walk up the stairs and then out the door. Well, my mom had just gotten the message about, you have a beautiful daughter that dances with roses, right after that reincarnation paper that was sent. And when she went in, she looked on her dresser, and there was a picture of me from my sophomore year, and I'm wearing this dress. And I loved this dress. It was like a black velvet, but it had like roses on it. Anyways, and she said she just froze because it was placed perfectly center on her dresser, and she said that she didn't even know where it came from after she got that message. So my mom started going through these like manic, and she really couldn't contact me or tell me much because I was now in another family, and we weren't really supposed to be spreading business, and everybody thought my mom was going crazy, and they wouldn't listen to her. And so she was actually getting very, very scared for my life at this point. Meanwhile, on my side of the craziness, I was having serious nightmares. Very, very, very vivid, crazy, like being ripped out of bed and dragged across the floor. I wouldn't even sleep in my own room. I took my daughter downstairs, and we slept in the kids' room downstairs because it was getting so bad. I was waking up around 11:30, midnight, and I couldn't ever go back to sleep until about 3 or 4 every single night. Like, I would just pace the floors back and forth because my anxiety would get so bad. Okay, TMI. But even as a plague, I would always sleep in my bra and panties. I couldn't stand clothes. But I always had this thought in the back of my brain that I was going to be killed wearing my bra and panties. Like, it was this weird thing. Like, I had to sleep that way, but at the same time I knew, like, I always feared that I was going to die, and purple was always my favorite color. Anyways, so there was just like a lot of funny things at play that really don't make sense to you right now, but they will later. So I ended up having to go see a spiritual healer because at this point I'm freaking out. Like, I'm not sleeping. I'm going batshit crazy pretty much. And my husband's like, whatever, and he won't lock the doors. He just thinks I'm, that I'm losing it. I was manic depressive. The poor guy, I'm going to be honest. I mean, I was a hot mess. So, I mean, I see where he was coming from too. But I ended up going to see a spiritual healer. She was the very first one I ever really saw. Irma, I used to see, we have this amazing lady named Irma in our community, and she was kind of the spiritual healer lady, and she'd given me magnets because I actually had 2 cysts on both wrists. And they were like a good quarter size on each wrist. I went into Joanne, and she was the community doctor midwife, and she jabbed it with a needle trying to suck out whatever's inside, and it hurt, and it wouldn't come out. So I went and saw Irma, and Irma put magnets on it, which made it bearable because I was in so much pain because I couldn't really work. We thought it was from typing. Anyways, I went, but I had this other stuff going on too with like being terrified, can't sleep, blah, 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 nightmares. I kept seeing, one of the nightmares I kept having was I was in a white dress and I had blonde hair. I remember being very like beautiful, and I was kind of standing on like a stage and somebody was taking pictures of me. And then I remember running, and then I watched someone die, and he had black hair. And I remember having a lot of love for this person, but they weren't my mate. And then I remember being stabbed to death, and I remember there was grass in the vision. So, again, start seeing if you can piece these things together. But I didn't understand why I was having these dreams. I mean, I didn't believe in reincarnation. I didn't know what was going on. So I went and saw the spiritual healer. Now, she was LDS, and she was an amazing, amazing person, but again, she also didn't believe in reincarnation. And so she's like, well, you have some dark spirits after you. You were part of the dark before, and you chose to go towards light, and your family wants you back. That's basically what she said. But as she was healing me, she stopped, and she just like stopped in my abdomen, and she's like, you have 17 demons after you. 17, right here in your tummy. And she's like healing the energy. And I always did have stomach issues. So I was like, oh. And so I just, she cleared that. And then she's like, and then she came to my wrists. Oh, and then she says, there were 5 of you in the womb. You had 3 brothers and a sister. She says you were particularly close to one of your brothers, and you blame yourself for their death. And I was like, whoa, a little bit more on top. I was like, what the freak? And then, I kind of thought she was crazy, but I was going with it. And then she got to my wrists, and she started again. She goes, you have forgotten who you are. And she goes, you have no recollection of who you actually are. She says, you are something. She's like, you're amazing. Like, she goes, I don't even know how to explain what you are, but you are like this, like, yeah. And she's like, and you've completely forgotten who you are. And even she couldn't even wrap her head with who exactly I was, but it was like she herself realized that I had complete amnesia. Anyways, so she did her little voodoo thing. Those were the most things that were most vital for me to understand. I'll explain to you later when we start piecing it together. But she did her thing, and guess what happened? My cysts are gone, and they never came back. Yep, they like popped the next day, and they would pop. They would pop and then come back, and pop and then come back, and pop and come back. I had always have to have people working on my wrists. But guess what? They never came back again. And even though I didn't really understand what she did, my stomach started feeling better, and a lot of things started working better. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'm healed. But it didn't take away the fact that I kept still having these dreams. So later, a few days later, my grandma felt a strong feeling. She says, Nat, she called me up. She says, hey, Nat, I need you to come see me. And so I went and saw my grandma, and I was telling her what was going on in my life. And she says, yeah, I was looking at this CD case, and she had some tapes. And she says, I just really feel like you need to listen to these. And I'm like, who's Edgar Casey, Graham? And I don't know if any of you have studied Edgar Casey. He is a Christian that was born about the same time as Joseph Smith. If you're LDS, he had a gift where when he would go to sleep, he could access the acoustic, I can't ever really say it right, records. Acoustic is like, yeah, whatever, I'm not even going to worry about it. Anyways, and so when he was 12 years old, he fell asleep on his algebra book, I believe. And then when he woke up, he knew every answer and every question in the book. And so what they discovered is that they gave him like a piece of my clothing. He would go to sleep, and in a trance, he would tell me what my issues were, what my health issues were, things like that, and then he would heal me. And there are hundreds and hundreds of medical cases, and every single one of them was person that did what he said was healed. There was only one case of a person that died, and the reason why she died was because the parents wouldn't do what he said, and it's because they thought he was batshit crazy. He told them to feed her a teaspoon of rust, and when the little girl died, she had worms all through her body, and they cut her open, and the worms were like falling out of her neck, and they dumped the rust on the worms, and they all died. So yeah, it sounded crazy, but the rust would have killed the worms, and then she would have, been able to get rid of through the rust through a tetanus shot or whatever. So anyways, but what happened to Edgar Casey is later in his life, he started, when he'd go into a trance, he started talking to people about their past lives. Like one guy was blind. He was 80% blind, but could play music like Beethoven. And so when Edgar Casey went into a trance, he told the man that he was a barbarian in his past life, would burn the victims out, his captives out with iron rods. And then towards the end of his life, he repented and started healing people through music when he became a musician. And so in this life, he was blessed with both his gift, and he was also taking care of the karma, so he had become blind for what he did to for the people in his lifetime. So, but when Edgar Casey found out he was talking about reincarnation, he freaked out because it was against his religion. And so he stopped doing healings. But the longer he stopped, the sicker he got, because that was his purpose. That was his purpose. And so you can never, you can't stop what you're meant to do. So Edgar Casey continued to talk about reincarnation, and he opened up a whole new world. People would come to him, and guess what? They all got better. Edgar Casey's an amazing person. If you want to do some research on reincarnation, look him up. But it did end up taking a toll on him, and he even knew he was going to die. He was psychic that way, and he told them, I'm going to die. And he died 4 days later. So, again, Edgar Casey's amazing. My grandma gave me these CDs, or tapes. I thought she was batshit crazy, too. But when I started listening to them, it opened up the dreams even more vividly. And so my guide started saying, look here, look. And because I knew I was famous, and because I knew, or I was at least pretty, and on stage, and people were taking pictures of me and things like that, and I kind of had an idea how she died. She was stabbed to death, and she was stabbed with other people, and there was grass involved. So I started looking on the internet, and I was looking through all these photos. I went to like all the celebrities that died, and all of a sudden I stopped at this one photo because she's like in her underwear. And when you look at your own body and you're so judgmental, I was looking at her like, girlfriend, get some freaking clothes on. Like I was looking at myself. Yeah. And if you want to hear the rest of the story, you're going to have to wait for number 3.